In the early 1500s, Leonardo da Vinci painted one of the most famous pieces of art of all time in the Mona Lisa. Now, it's famous for a ton of reasons, but one of the reasons that always strikes me the hardest is her smile. As simple as it may look, I find it so interesting that no matter from where you're standing or how far away you are when you're looking at the Mona Lisa, the smile can mean so many different things. It can be beautiful, it can be mysterious, it can be not even a smile at all, it could be like a smirk. Whether intentionally or not, the smile was mysterious at best. I know this is a big jump, but follow me here. Fast forward to September 2018. Lil Wayne drops the long-awaited The Carter 5 album, which has a song called Mona Lisa featuring Kendrick Lamar. In the song, Wayne and Kendrick talk about the relationship that they both have to the same woman, right? Wayne says that he has Liz put men in vulnerable positions so he can rob them of all their valuable belongings, while Kendrick is the woman's boyfriend in this situation, and he slowly starts to realize that his partner is living a double life behind his back. The reason we're thinking about those two examples today is because a woman with a Mona Lisa-like smile pulled a con similar to the one in the Lil Wayne song, where she pretended to love and get back together with her ex-husband only to gain access to his house, steal all of his valuable belongings, and then get together with her new boyfriend. That woman was a mother, and today we're going to be talking about how that event and the butterfly effects that it caused took a young Robert Lee Maupin and turned him into the legendary pimp known as Iceberg Slim. What to do, everybody? Welcome to my channel. Welcome back to me. If this is a welcome back, what's up? I hope you're enjoying your day. If this is your first time watching this video or coming to my channel, I know you probably have a question. Yo, Chris reads? And yeah, I do know how to read. Allegedly. And today we're going to be talking about this book right here and the man in it, Pimp, The Story of My Life by Iceberg Slim. First and foremost, as we get talking into kind of the main subject matter of this video, I do want to have just a general trigger warning. There's a lot of stuff that I'm going to be talking about in this video, and if you choose to read this book, there's a lot of kind of serious subject matter in here. So I'm going to have something pop up on screen right now. Shout out Storygraphs for having a whole content warning section for the books. So this is just some of what we're going to talk about in this video, as well as just some of the stuff that we're going to talk about in this book. But with all that out of the way, let's get started. It wasn't long into Slim's life before he became acquainted with the evils that could lurk in a human soul. He had a father who suggested to his mother that they put him on the Catholic Church doorstep so they could get rid of him. After his mother refused to get rid of her only child, his father responded by grabbing a baby Slim and throwing him at the wall. Thank God Slim survived, but his father proceeded to leave the family for the foreseeable future after that event. Just a few years later, at age 3, Slim's mother began leaving him with a babysitter who, unbeknownst to her, was taking advantage of and SAing Slim while he was in her care. Obviously, these are just moments, but it's part of an incredibly terrible and disgusting childhood that Slim had to survive through, right? And survive he did, but there's a lot of research showing that even though he physically might have moved past these moments, his mind and his body never did. In 1998, Kaiser Permanente and the Center for Disease Control published a study on childhood trauma, and this study found that adverse childhood experiences could bring on, expected things like anxiety, depression, and PTSD, but it was also correlated with things like cancer, diabetes, heart disease, Alzheimer's, and negative effects on income and education attainment. Eventually, a new father figure was brought into Slim's life, a man named Henry, and this man loved Slim and his mother with all of his heart and financially funded the mother and young child for the entirety of the relationship. This was the first positive male father figure that Slim had in his life, and he loved them wholeheartedly. The Fatherhood Project did a bunch of research on the positive effects that having a father figure in your life, whether it's biological or not, can have on a child. And they found out a bunch of information like that fatherhood involvement is related to positive child health outcomes, better emotional, academic, social, and behavioral outcomes, and they obviously occupy a critical role in childhood development. And like I said, most importantly, this was the first man in his life that Slim could trust, and very quickly that man was ripped away from his life. Looking back on the situation, Slim realized that his mother never really loved Henry, definitely not as much as he loved Henry, but she loved what he could provide. His mother took him and left Henry in order to get back with Slim's biological father, and that's when she had her whole Lil Wayne Mona Lisa moment. So not only was his stepfather completely taken out of his life without his control, but Slim also saw a new side of his mother that he had never seen before. And I recognize at this point we've only talked about Slim and his like absolutely horrible upbringing, right? But I don't want that to cloud kind of like the next 30-ish years of his life. I think you can say that Slim had an absolutely terrible, horrible upbringing, and then from the ages of 18 to 42, he proceeded to do terrible, horrible things, you know? Like he would pimp, he would lie, he would cheat, he would steal in order to get the things that he want. I think you could feel bad for his childhood and also feel bad about the things that he did. I think both of those things can be true. I think he says it best in the preface of this book, so I'm just gonna quote it, you know, verbatim here. In this book, I will take you, the reader, with me into the secret inner world of a pimp. I will lay bare my life and thoughts as a pimp. The account of my brutality and cunning as a pimp will fill many of you with revulsion. However, if one intelligent, valuable young man or woman can be saved from the destructive slime, then the displeasure I have given will have been outweighed by that individual's use of his potential in a socially constructive manner. Perhaps my remorse for my ghastly life will diminish to the degree that within this one book, I have been allowed to purge myself. Perhaps one day I can win respect as a constructive human being. Most of all, I wish to be a decent example for my children and for that wonderful woman in the grave, my mother. Slim recognizes who he is and what he was in his like darkest of days, and I hope that the people who read this book, or even if you're never going to read the book and you just watch this video, I hope we can take his life for what I think Slim would have wanted us to take his life as: a learning opportunity and a warning. Two things need to be discussed before we can continue on into this like second stage of Slim's life. The first is Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? It's typically depicted in like a triangle formation that is used to help us better understand why humans do things and how the things that we can do can lead to an overall fulfilling life. This includes self-actualization, our esteem, our sense of love and belonging, our safety needs, and our physiological needs. The second thing is reiterating the basic understanding that pimping is human trafficking. Maybe that wasn't all well known when this was going on in the 30s and the 40s, but what Slim refers to as pimping is a problem that we are very lucky to know of and understand more of today. Slim tries his best to kind of just put his life out on display and not glorify it in any way, shape, or form. And I don't think other creative media does that. So let's get, I just wanted to get that out of the way first, like pimping isn't cool. And while research has never reached kind of like a consensus that Maslow's theory is like the way we're supposed to like understand human experience and things like that, but I think it provided a very good like base foundation minimum that we can work off of, right? And whether Slim realized it and whether other pimps realized it, that was the foundation that they were working on as well. Iceberg Slim and people like him and pimps like him were absolute masters at effectively like hacking a woman's brain and becoming the sole provider of the needs that Maslow described. In the book, Slim talks about how the greatest of pimps would break a woman down mentally, emotionally, physically, and build them back up in order to make them into the exact woman that the pimp needed them to be. A study by the Canadian Journal of Police and Security Services in 2006 found that of the 22 perpetrators that they studied, over a third of them met the qualifications for being psychopaths. And I know that word gets thrown around a lot, so I want to provide an actual definition. A psychopath is characterized by having impaired empathy, remorse, boldness, disinhibition, and being egocentric. And as someone who read this book in the span of like 6 hours, I can't think of a better way to describe Iceberg Slim. The psychological attacks that the pimps employ on the women begins even way before a woman becomes part of a pimp's like circle, or a stable as it's called in the book. Whether by themselves or through one of the women that the pimp already has in his stable, they will find the weakness that is most like hurtful or the most useful for the pimp in the woman that they are trying to get, and they will use that fully to their advantage. Whether it's homelessness, a criminal record, drug abuse, which is a big part of this book. Both Slim and people like him will either help these women escape their lives that they're trying to escape, or if it's something like drug abuse, they will give them more of what they want as long as they proceed to like work for the pimp. The psychological abuse can very quickly turn into physical abuse when the woman has kind of been in this situation for a really long time, and the psychological abuse doesn't have the same impact that it did when she was first brought in. This is evident in one of the stories that Slim tells about the first woman he ever had in his stable. But after a while, this woman had grown tired of getting used and abused, both by the men that she was selling herself to and by Slim. She was tired of his inconsistent love and began growing tired of being just a woman of the night, in general. After asking another pimp he knew what he should do, Slim returned to that hotel that him and the woman were staying at and proceeded to unroll a metal coat hanger and beat this woman until she repented over and over for going against what Slim had told her to do and how Slim had told her to live her life. Years later, way after this woman had left Slim's rotation of women, in like a completely random situation that did not involve her whatsoever, Slim was in an acquaintance's apartment. The acquaintance had left, and he saw this familiar looking woman passed out underneath like some bed sheets. And he was able to confirm that this woman was who he thought she was, the first woman in his stable, by removing the bed sheets and looking at the scars that he had left her from the beating that we just talked about. Keep in mind, this is like a decade later. As disgusting as this example was, it's nowhere near an outlier, right? Through each and every one of like the 400 women that Iceberg Slim claims to have like used in his circle of prostitution and sex trafficking, Slim perfected his tactics through each one. And while it was nowhere near a well-oiled machine, it was enough to give him the life and the women and the cars and the clothes and the drugs that he so desperately needed and wanted. Throughout the novel, Slim has a very back and forth relationship with his mother, right? In the very beginning of the book, he actually says, let me see if I can find it. Perhaps if Mama had kept the burglary cross, the con that she pulled on her ex-husband, a secret from me, in some tiny way, I might have been stronger to fight off that pimping disease. I don't know, but somehow after that cross, Mama just didn't seem like the same honest, sweet Mama that I had prayed in church with back in Rockford. There's a scene a few pages after that quote where Slim talks about how, as an adult, after he left the pimping game, he goes to his mother's grave. And I think this scene actually would have been better towards the end of the book, but I think it's beautiful and it's poignant, because you see this man who you're gonna hear, again, we're on page 10 out of almost 300, and you see kind of this older, like beaten down ex-pimp crying at his mother's grave over the abuse that both of them received and the life that both of them lived. And I think it was important to see that side of Slim and that side of how much he loved his mother later on in life, early in the book, before you see all of the kind of butterfly effects that her behavior has in his early life. He even has a moment of self-reflection where he says, when I walked away from her grave, I thought, I don't know, maybe that prison head shrinker was right when he told me that I had become a pimp because of my unconscious hatred for my mother. Even as he grew older though, and he consciously forgave his mother, I think that his trauma and hatred of women was so built up to a point where no amount of forgiveness could fix or could change the man that Slim had turned into. And while his mother wasn't perfect, she definitely tried to turn Robert Lee Maupin, who as an adult changed his name to Robert Beck, she definitely tried to set him up for success kind of in his teenage years. At this point, she had a beauty salon that was making a decent amount of money, and she also had a bunch of connections and was able to give Robert the opportunity to go to college. She enrolled him in Tuskegee University, an opportunity that a lot of black men in the 1930s straight up didn't even have. It wasn't even like in the end of the tunnel, like it just wasn't a possibility. But at this point, Robert was 18. And this was the very beginning, the very inklings of a pimp named Iceberg slowly started to creep its way into Robert's veins. Eventually, Slim left the pimping, sex trafficking game, right? At this point, he was 42, and in the book, he talks about how he was entering old age for a pimp in his 30s, like entering 30. So by 42, he was ancient in pimp ways. He says that he couldn't handle like the nuisances and the violence that came with like this new generation of pimps. At this point, I believe it was like the 50s or like the late 50s, early 60s. So he couldn't handle kind of like the violence and the nuisances that came with this new generation of pimp. And also the women who were obviously still being like abused and trafficked. They were beginning to realize more of the power and the worth that they had while still being in this pimping game, and Slim just decided to give it all up. But I can't say without a shadow of a doubt in my mind that if he was in better health with less competition, that he still would have chose to not be a pimp, if that makes sense. It's like a really kind of scenario. And as someone who read this book, like it's hard to come for me to a definitive conclusion on whether Slim would have stopped pimping if the situation and like the specifics were slightly more in his favor, if that makes sense. I want to highlight a Reddit comment that I saw that while I was doing research for this video, and I also had the question on, you know, is Slim evil? Like, would he have stopped pimping if he was in better health? Things like that were like kind of rolling through my brain. I came across this comment and I want to highlight it. One thing I like to do is ask myself whether the thing I'm considering supporting is good rather than attempting to judge a person. His pimping sounds bad, so let's not pay him for that service. Writing a confessional book about his crimes, that might be good. If a known thief shines my shoes, is it bad to pay him for the honest work? If we can't support bad people doing good things, isn't there no path out of evil? Robert Beck, Iceberg Slim, ended up dying at age 73 in 1992 due to liver failure, but you saw his health deteriorating, like we said, in his late 30s and early 40s due to his rampant drug and alcohol abuse. For a large portion of his life, Robert was an inherently evil person who did inherently evil things. But I don't think it's crazy to say that Robert Beck died a changed man. At this point, he had been married twice and had multiple kids that he decided to fully dedicate his life to. Pimp, by 1973, had sold over 2 million copies, and he proceeded to write over 9 other fiction and nonfiction books that made him an acclaimed author in Black and urban American literature. I, like many others, first heard of this book in Dave Chappelle's comedy special, The Bird Revelation, where he spends the last last portion of the special talking about a story that that Slim references in this book that Dave Chappelle uses as kind of like an analogy, a metaphor towards his experience in show business. And I think the story is worth retelling, especially when we're talking about the psychology of people in this business and what they will do in order to survive. Slim had a bottom woman, essentially a woman in his stable that he could trust, that he could rely upon, but that most importantly made him the most money. This woman was reaching the end of her mileage, essentially the amount of tricks that she would be able to turn, the amount of times that she was okay with selling her body for Slim's benefit. She began acting out and overly and overtly disagreeing and arguing with Slim in front of his other women and in front of other people that respected him. And Slim couldn't have that because it ruined his image. Slim also wasn't at a point where he could afford to lose this woman. She was making him a lot of money and he trusted her with a lot of responsibilities when it came to maintaining his organization. Slim was able to design and orchestrate a situation with a fake death and a fake doctor to confirm it all, and convinced this woman that the man that she was sent to have sex with, his death was her fault. And Slim was the only person who could keep her away from the police and any other ramifications, that could come from her part in this man's murder. A woman who was just about to escape the grasp that sex trafficking, and most importantly Slim, had on her, was now, she thought, physically and emotionally indebted to this man for saving her from a lifetime of prison. The man that she trusted to take care of her in any and all situations did exactly that in what was, she thought, the most trying time, the most trying moment of her life. And in order to repay his selflessness, she continued to pimp herself out for Slim for years to come. As abhorrent as it might be to look at Iceberg Slim and to look at pimps like him both back then and now, and recognize the absolute mastery and control they had over the conscious and the unconscious needs of the women in their lives, I think there's a lot that we as people can learn, both in how to recognize when this behavior is happening, when other people are exhibiting this control and this abuse, but it also helps us understand how people under that control and under that abuse, it allows us to recognize that and hopefully help them get out of it and reintegrate them into everyday society. I'm looking at the end of the book. Iceberg says, "I have had many interesting and even humorous experiences in this new life." This is after he gave up pimping and has a family and a wife. "They will have to wait for now. I see my little family is awake. I'll have to light the heater. I can't let them get up in the early morning chill. How about that? An iceberg with a warm heart." I want to thank you guys for watching this video. I know I say this a lot, but this has been my favorite video to write and to research and to record. First and foremost, if anybody or anyone you know is or are in a situation where sex trafficking might be an issue, might be happening, I'm gonna flash the number for the sex trafficking help hotline on screen right now, and it's gonna be in the description down below. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you need help, please don't hesitate to call. I will also be listing all of the sources that I use down below. I know we covered a lot, from the Mona Lisa to Lil Wayne to sex trafficking, but if anything that I said sounded interesting or you want to do more research on, you can head down to the description below and you could have a little starting point to start off from. When it comes to the actual book, Pimp, The Story of My Life by Iceberg Slim, I would definitely recommend it. I think it's as strong of a 4-star book as a 4-star book could be. I have talked about it in previous videos, but I think I read the first chapter or two of this book twice maybe, and it didn't grab me. And when I fully committed to reading this and doing the thing and just getting through the book, I'm very glad that I did. I'm not disappointed at all. And like I said with the trigger warnings at the beginning of this video, this book has all of those and more. So if you're in any way, shape, or form interested in reading this book, just make sure you do your research. One of my favorite things about this book is Slim doesn't hide anything, and he is very honest and raw and forthcoming in what he was doing and how he was doing it, which I found very interesting and intriguing, but I understand that a lot of people might be turned off by that. So make sure you do your research if you're in any way, shape, or form interested in reading this book. Lastly, I want to thank you guys for watching this video and for watching what are essentially just book reports in video form. If you enjoyed anything at all about this video, please give the video a like. If there's something I said that you agree with or you disagree with, or you just want to start some discussion either with me or with the other viewers of this video, please leave a comment down below. We would all appreciate it if we could have some cool and awesome conversation down in the comments below. And if you like anything that I said, or if you like any of the videos that I'm putting out, or if you like this video, hit the subscribe button down below, as well as it lets me know that people like this style of video and people like the content I'm putting out. So I would really appreciate it. And if you did all that, if you deem it necessary, I would appreciate it, and I thank you very much. All right, y'all, make sure you do something that makes you happy today, and make sure you check on the people that you love and appreciate in your life, and make sure that they're doing things that make them happy today as well. Again, thank you for watching, and I'll catch y'all next time. Peace.